In this video, we are going through probably the most hyped group in all of solo leveling, the Monarchs and their godly powers, so make sure to stay tuned for that. Chill the Monarch within and smash that like button if you like solo leveling and want to see more videos like this one on the channel. Make this the video you join the fam by subscribing and hitting that notification bell if you haven't, so you don't miss future solo leveling videos. And now, without further ado, let's jump into it, spoilers and all. So Monarchs are an ancient race of overpowered beings created by the Absolute Being, and they are known as the enemies of the rulers. The Monarchs represent the darkness and the rulers represent the light. One of the more important monarchs, as we'll see, can be considered both a monarch and ruler, but more on that later. So first off, we have Yogu-Munt, the king of demonic specters, and the Monarch of Transfiguration. So the Monarch of Transfiguration is not one of the more notable monarchs because of course we are building up to them and the more hype ones later on. However, he has his own useful and unique abilities, namely creating portals that can transport him and even armies between worlds. You can also say he's a coward since he didn't want to fight Jinwu with other monarchs, fearing that he'd end up like the Monarch of White Flames, more on him later on. However, he was arguably right to be cautious, since those that did go did not fare well, as we'll see when we get to them. The Monarch of Transfiguration is also the one that tells the Dragon Monarch that the Shadow Monarch has turned against them. He helps the Dragon Monarch by, you guessed it, creating portals to transport his dragon army to Earth. Unfortunately for Yogu-Munt, his efforts weren't ultimately that effective in the battle since Jinwu just used Dragon Sphere to immobilize him and all the dragons while taking the Dragon Monarch with him to another place using Shadow Exchange. Thus, we don't really know what happened to this monarch who escaped death so many times in this timeline, but in the next timeline that takes place during the epilogue, we do see his fate. Like in the timeline before, the Monarch of Transfiguration is the last of the monarchs to survive besides the Dragon Monarch himself. And I guess that makes sense since he can disappear through portals and he fears fighting Jinwu. However, we do see him defeated by Jinwu this time in the Dimensional Rift, also sometimes called the crack between dimensions or the dimensional crack. Number 2, and these names are definitely hard to pronounce, Quereksha, the Monarch of Plagues, also known as the Queen of Insects. She was one of the 3 monarchs that went to take care of the 3rd ranked national level hunter Christopher Reed, and they succeeded even though the fact that they had to team up against him doesn't speak wonders for their individual powers. During the same meeting where the Monarch of Transfiguration refused to go after Jinwu, the Queen of Insects agrees to help, thinking they'll get to him before he unlocks his full potential. When the 3 monarchs attack Jinwu, we see the queen use corpses to create insect warriors to do her bidding. We see her manifest giant green hands that can be used as weapons, although even Beru, Jinwu's ant soldier, can cut through them. Since the queen refers to herself as the mother of all insects that reside within the world of chaos, she is insulted by the fact that Beru is still loyal to Jinwu and not her despite being an ant. She shows impressive regeneration skills and even tries to poison Jinwu, but poison doesn't work on him. She loses her cool and attacks Jinwu with an arm that's been transformed into a giant deadly insect, but Jinwu uses his mutilation skill to finish her off. She can't regenerate from Jinwu's attack, all she can do is admire Jinwu's darkness, calling it glorious in her final moments. Number 3 is Legia, the king of giants and the monarch of the beginning. Legia was actually a monarch that was captured by the rulers and successfully restrained with mana-absorbing chains. Definitely sounds like sea stone chains from One Piece now that I think about it. Eventually Jinwu comes across him and Legia offers to team up with Jinwu and support him, since in his view Jinwu can't take on all the monarchs and rulers who have him in their sights alone. Legia tells Jinwu straight up to release him from his seal and he will help him. Legia uses a curse that prevents either one of them from lying to each other. The pledge of honesty works and the two have an honest conversation. Legia tells Jinwu that the rulers are preparing the world to be a battlefield for the war against the monarchs and rulers. Although Legia said he'd support Jinwu, Legia cannot tell Jinwu he's on humanity's side when asked. In fact, Jinwu realizes that as long as the mana crystal is embedded in the back of his neck, he will hear the voice telling him to kill all humans like the other monsters. And as a monarch, he cannot be turned into a shadow slave. Legia ends up attacking Jinwu, and so Jinwu tells him to forget about the deal since it's too dangerous to keep him alive. Jinwu ends him, but Legia calls Jinwu a calamity before he passes on. He tells Jinwu that he hopes everything Jinwu wishes to protect will burn to ash. Harsh. Jinwoo levels up like crazy after defeating Legia, so much so that the system tells him due to a large amount of EXP received, additional time may be taken. This obviously shows just how strong Legia was as one of the monarchs. Number 4 is Tarnok, the king of monstrous humanoids and the monarch of the Iron Body. Tarnok was one of the 3 that teamed up against Christopher Reed. Tarnok, however, was smart enough to avoid fighting Jinwoo. He was one of the ones who refused to take Jinwoo on, thinking it was better to wait for the Dragon Monarch. However, this cautiousness only prolonged the inevitable. Tarnok did wait for the Dragon Monarch, and when they came to Earth for the final war, Tarnok found himself facing the first-ranked national level hunter Thomas Andre. Tarnok was confident he could behead Andre before the latter blinked, but it's actually a trap. Belion and Beru, 2 of Jinwoo's strongest shadow soldiers, along with more members of the army, appear from Andre's shadow. Shadow soldier Tusk even prevents Tarnok from contacting and warning the Dragon Monarch about it. Tarnok undergoes spiritual body manifestation, and he looks menacing in this form, but he's still no match for the already mentioned trio working together. Tarnok and his troops are ultimately defeated easily, and Jinwoo didn't even have to fight him himself. Number 5 is Salad, the king of snowfolk and the Monarch of Frost. Salad is the monarch who tracks down everyone's favorite old guy, Chairman Go Gun-hee, one of the 7 ruler vessels. He uses his ice-based powers to defeat Go and extinguish another fragment of brilliant light. Salad can create ice and use it in creative ways, whether it's creating walls of ice or ice swords which he can use to penetrate his enemies. Before long, Salad comes face to face with Jinwoo, who wonders if Salad is an ice elf. The Monarch of Frost doesn't want to risk his life, so he gives Jinwoo the choice of fighting him or trying to save the chairman. Ultimately, Jinwoo chooses to try and save the chairman, and Salad retreats. Unfortunately, it's too late to save the chairman anyways because of all the wounds he suffered, so now you can bet that Jinwoo wants revenge against this Monarch of Frost. Salad, for his part, tries to rally other monarchs to his cause, as we discussed before Jinwoo unlocks more of his potential and becomes too powerful. As we know, Tarnok and Yogumunt wisely refuse, while the Queen of Insects and another monarch, which we'll be discussing next, join him, both agreeing that Jinwoo is still weak enough for them to handle. Salad shows some cool uses for his ice powers in this final fight, like creating shields from ice and creating giant spikes of ice that trap Jinwoo's shadow soldiers inside. He wields a giant ice trident that he cuts Jinwoo with as well. And honestly, Salad and the other monarchs do well and actually do beat Jinwoo. We are even told that Jinwoo died, so you can't really beat someone much more than that, and we see him being encapsulated in Salad's ice powers. However, death just ends up being the trigger for a power-up for Jinwoo, as we'll get into later. While Jinwoo is reviving, his hunter dad protects his body. When he's finally fully revived, powered up and all, the other monarch flees, sensing Jinwoo's current power. Salad alone now summons up his full power and launches countless ice tridents that rain down from the sky. Then he prepares what can only be described as a giant iceberg to fall on everyone and everything below. Jinwoo's upgraded soldiers are enough to stop the iceberg attack though. Salad launches all his power at Jinwoo when his back is turned. It's for all the marbles, but Jinwoo effortlessly stops the attack by raising one hand to intercept it. After finishing off the monarch that tried to flee, Jinwoo comes back to finish off Salad, and he does so effortlessly with a few blows from his daggers. Number 6 is Rakan, the king of the beasts and the Monarch of Fangs. So this guy is the one that also accompanied the insect lady and the ice elf. So as you might assume, a beast-related power would have super strength, speed, and regeneration. But his main thing is being able to turn into a giant white wolf, or he can just partially transform parts of his body as needed. The dude clearly likes hunting in a pack, since he was one of the 3 that attacked Christopher Reed. The best way to describe him is as a coward who will run away if his instincts tell him he's in danger. He was strong enough to completely overpower Thomas Andre, known as the Goliath and the first-ranking national hero in the world, so he's not weak. However, as mentioned, he doesn't fare as well against Jinwoo. First, he struggles with Salad to get past Jinwoo's dad, and then Jinwoo revives. After this, Rakan can sense his newly awakened powers, and he runs. Unfortunately for him, Jinwoo doesn't let him get away. Rakan goes from the predator to the prey and gets absolutely wrecked. He immediately senses that he can't win or run when Jinwoo appears before him. He senses the overwhelming difference in power and bends his knee aka he bows down and prepares to obey as his instincts are warning him to do. However, Jinwoo says he will only forgive him if he survives 5 of his attacks, 1 for each claw that tore through his chest. Rakan unleashes his full power, the power of a giant white wolf beast, but he doesn't make it past 4 attacks. And that is the end of the cowardly wolf who was willing to say anything or do anything or backstab anyone to survive. Kind of fitting that Jinwoo made sure to end him before he came back for Salad. If he escaped again after what he did, that would be a huge bummer, but we'll get to the again part when we get to another monarch on this list. Number 7 is Baran, the King of Demons, aka the Monarch of White Flames. In the past, Baran was one of the monarchs along with Rakan, who betrayed and tried to kill the Shadow Monarch. More on him later. We all know Rakan loves running away, but Baran died in that battle. Still, we did get to see a quote-unquote copy of him and his powers on the Demon Castle's 100th and final floor. After all, a monarch is definitely a fitting final boss, and the fact that he is the Monarch of Demons makes it all the more fitting. It was a difficult fight for Jinwoo. Baran's clone could even shoot energy blasts from his mouth, which caught Jinwoo off guard. Jinwoo was saved when best demon waifu Esil distracted Baran, and Jinwoo seized the opportunity to use Dominator's touch to turn the tables. First, he took out Baran's arm, and then his head with an uppercut. Number 8 is the very hype Antares, the King of Demons and the Monarch of Destruction. He is at first at least considered to be the strongest of the monarchs, although the next monarch we will talk about will eventually surpass him. You could say that Antares was the leader of most of the other monarchs, and he waged war against the rulers. Eventually, Antares grew concerned with the Shadow Monarch's powers and sent Rakan and Baran to take him out, but they failed miserably, and as discussed, Baran lost his life. This was definitely a miscalculation, and with Baran and the Shadow Monarch no longer fighting the rulers, not to mention the chained Legia, the rulers won and the remaining monarchs fled into a crack between dimensions. As we know, Earth ends up being the battlefield for the second phase of the war between the rulers and the monarchs, but Antares is too strong to just find a vessel like the other monarchs, so he has to wait longer for the conditions to be right before he joins the war on Earth. When the conditions have been met, this bringer of the end arrives through a gate and into Canada of all places, which given Canada's state lately is not a surprising choice. Military weapons don't even leave a scratch on Antares, while a flame blast from him easily incinerates everything. To give you a sense of how strong this guy is, Jinwoo's soldiers don't want him to fight Antares because they think it's too dangerous, and it's not easy for Jinwoo to step up and fight knowing the risks either, but he does it anyway. And he always did, even when he was weaker, as we'll get to. This is not an opponent for our overpowered protagonist to flex on. This is an opponent that our overpowered protagonist doesn't even know if he can beat. The final fight between Jinwoo and Antares is definitely one of the most epic of the entire series, if not the most epic. We see Antares turn into a dragon, use Dragon Fear to paralyze Jinwoo's soldiers, and launch fire blasts that scorch the entire battlefield. Antares refers to himself as the Avatar of Destruction, who doesn't hesitate to sacrifice oneself for the sake of a raging war. The amalgam of blood, scream, madness, and destruction, a being created solely for the purpose of war. That is me, Antares, end quote. Antares offers Jinwoo the chance to join him because he sees that he can help them beat the rulers, but of course Jinwoo declines. When the fighting resumes, Jinwoo notices that his daggers that have sliced through so many opponents don't even leave a scratch on Antares' dragon skin, and the fire blasts of Jinwoo's own shadow dragons are also ineffective. Jinwoo straight up tells us that Antares has unimaginably more power and defense compared to everyone he's fought so far. Jinwoo needs a new power if he hopes to defeat Antares, and this leads him to surrounding himself with the power of darkness. It forms a big sturdy dark armor around him, and Antares points out that in the process, he is summoning the power of death onto Earth. Even his cool armor of death itself starts to melt after some exchanges with Antares and his dangerous breath. Jinwoo returns to normal, thinking about how it takes an enormous amount of stamina just to maintain a great power like that. Jinwoo then surrounds his human body with a thin but no doubt potent layer of shadow as he continues the fight against Antares, who himself has now surrounded his own humanoid body with a dragon-like armor. Antares mentions that even if Jinwoo is the king of the dead, he must fear death. He asks, do you wish for the flame that even incinerates death itself to turn you into ash? I gotta say, it's pretty hype to think about a flame so strong it can incinerate death itself, but that's how hype Antares is, the king of dragons. Keep in mind, this whole time he has the upper hand against Jinwoo. Just when Antares is confident in his victory, Jinwoo summons his shadow army and they all attack at once. Jinwoo harnesses all his power into one slash that seems to cut Antares in two vertically. But Antares is still not finished. It's okay though, because Jinwoo had a backup plan the entire time. The clashing of the two heavyweights like Jinwoo and Antares distorted the space enough so that the rulers could enter the world through here. As Antares says, Jinwoo found a way to win the war even if he lost the battle. Antares says, it's my loss for only looking at the smaller battle. After confirming that Antares was the one that sent the two monarchs to betray the Shadow Monarch, Jinwoo says Ashborn the Shadow Monarch sends his regards. Jinwoo flips Antares off as the rulers finish him with their spears. Jinwoo though is not satisfied with this victory, where he had to resort to a strategy that included the rulers, and of course he's not satisfied with all the losses humanity suffered. He decides that he'll turn back time one last time using the ruler's cup of reincarnation, and he defeats all the monarchs in the dimensional rift, this time even Antares, without any help from the rulers. So it's a win-win. We got a fight against an opponent Jinwoo could barely survive against, and then we got to see him get stronger and as usual solo that same opponent, because I guess it wouldn't be solo enough if he relied too much on the rulers. So that leaves us with number 9 and number 10. Of course, they are the Shadow Monarch Ashborn and Jinwoo. They are both two, but as the story makes clear, they pretty much become one being, and so they can be discussed together. I inevitably had to cover them in the previous sections, but I'll go into more detail here. Ashborn was initially the strongest ruler, aka the most brilliant fragment of light. Unlike the other rulers who wanted to kill the supreme being or absolute being that gave them life in the hope that it would stop the eternal war between them and the monarchs, Ashborn remained loyal. As a result, he was also betrayed and left for dead by the rulers. Death was a kind of awakening where the most brilliant fragment of light was turned into the even more powerful Shadow Monarch, aka the King of the Dead. However, even with his new power and new shadow army, he was too late to save the absolute being who had been taken out by the other rulers. So as a monarch himself now, but specifically because the others betrayed his god, he joined up with the other monarchs. His newfound powers though were feared by the rulers and monarchs alike. The monarchs did the very not smart thing of betraying him, and even though he did defeat Drakan and Baran in battle, his shadow army was almost wiped out in the process. The rulers descended when Ashborn was weak, and it was the perfect opportunity to attack him. After being betrayed by all sides and losing the one being that he wanted to protect, you could bet that Ashborn was at his lowest. And yet, at this point, the rulers asked for forgiveness instead. He didn't want peace and would have preferred for them to kill him, but they didn't. Ashborn was now confused. Although he didn't know all the monarchs betrayed him for sure at this point, 2 did very clearly betray him, and now the rulers spared him and asked forgiveness when they could have ended him by sending him into nothingness. He decided to regroup and focus on finishing off Rakan, who had run away before he could finish him off like he did with Baran. But as he was away recovering, the rulers turned the tide, the balance was upset, and they came out on top. Still so stupid that the monarchs betrayed Ashborn and pretty much sealed their fate. In the crack between dimensions, he rejoined the monarchs, not really knowing what he wanted to do for sure. Antares wouldn't allow any monarchs to fight now that they were defeated and needed time to regain their strength. Now at this point you might be like, why would Ashborn rejoin the monarchs instead of staying with the rulers? Well, let's not forget that the rulers did betray him before and even killed the being they were meant to serve and the one Ashborn wanted to protect above all others. As a truly loyal being, this obviously bothered Ashborn a lot, even though they did ask his forgiveness and spared him afterwards. Also, he arguably didn't know for sure then that Antares was behind the Rakan and Baran betrayal, so he may have thought that it was just those 2 rogues acting on their own, and he already got the ultimate revenge against one. So that might help explain why he might have went with them, even though I also thought it was a strange move when I first was reading the story. But he'll go into the reasoning more later on as well, because he didn't really feel like he had a place with the rulers, but we'll get to that. Fundamentally though, the point is he was confused and didn't have an easy right move to choose. We do know that Earth was the battleground for the war, and it was destroyed in the process because it couldn't take all the magical power. multiple times. The rulers who wanted to maintain the world and the beings on it were upset and used the Cup of Reincarnation to turn back time each time. Keep in mind, both sides retained their memories of what happened before the time reverse, and both sides readjusted their strategies continuously. Rulers created the world of hunters and lent their powers to humans so they could kill magical beasts and strengthen the magical power of the earth in general so it could take more magic, so that some humans could survive, while the monarchs similarly looked for suitable human vessels to descend onto Earth quicker. When the monarchs were looking at the human world, Ashbourne and Antares were too strong to find suitable vessels for early access. A mage called the Architect, though, offered to help Ashbourne in exchange for immortality. Ashbourne was actually the one who noticed and picked Jinwoo because Jinwoo kept defying expectations. Despite being so weak and being so close to death so many times, he kept evading death again and again, continuously putting himself in danger for his family. Although the Architect Mage didn't approve of Jinwoo as a vessel, Ashbourne insisted, as Ashbourne tells Jinwoo, "I am the record of your struggles, the evidence of your resistance, and the reward of your pain," end quote. The mage created the game-like leveling up system in order to turn Jinwoo into a suitable vessel for Ashbourne's full power eventually. As Ashbourne puts it, and I quote, "Games and recreation. By using those to fuel your amusement, the Architect system, which used my power, transformed your body level by level to match mine," end quote. When Jinwoo points out that Ashbourne betrayed the Architect in the end, Ashbourne explains his thought process. He says, "The ruler's apology, the betrayal of the monarchs, I pondered on which side I should stand on. I made a decision. The time I spent with you was so blissful. Perhaps I did not want to lose you. I became you. You became me. No matter who becomes the owner of this body, it will not be strange, for we are already one," end quote. Then Ashbourne offers Jinwoo the choice of essentially a blissful dream world or going back to reality where there are adversaries left to fight. Jinwoo, of course, chooses to go back, and this time with Ashbourne's full power. He goes back as the Shadow Monarch, and Ashbourne even calls his new power absolute. Jinwoo answers that he knows because, and I quote, "I am you," end quote. So this is why I'm speaking of them together. No matter how they started out, by this point in the story and onwards, they're for all intents and purposes one being. And we've seen pretty much all of the rest that happens through the explanations of the other monarchs. Shadow Monarch Jinwoo goes on to defeat all the other monarchs, including Antares, with the help of the rulers, and then uses the Cup of Reincarnation again to do it solo in the crack between dimensions. He eventually marries Cha, and they have an overpowered son, no shocker there. If you want to go into more detail about the particulars of their love story, then check out my extensive video explaining their relationship, link on screen right now. Like and subscribe for more solo leveling content like this. Leave video ideas you'd love to see in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.